right, we are now going to move on to lesson 2.6 and 2.7, which is ratios and proportions. To start off, ratios, our definition is going to be a comparison of two numbers by division. A comparison of two numbers by division. A proportion is two ratios that equal each other, is a proportion. Simplest form is just as it sounds. Let's say I have a ratio 2 to 10 or 2 over 10. The simplest form of this, I could divide both the top and the bottom each by 2 to simplify it. It would be 1/5. That is the simplest form. Okay, the simplest fraction that you can create. So writing a ratio, it says a volleyball team plays 14 home matches and 10 away matches. It says find the ratio of home matches to away matches. So our home matches is 14, our away matches is 10. So that would be the letter to answer A, the ratio of home to away. And then the ratio of home to all. So there are 14 home matches, but how many in total are there? Looks like the 14 and the 10 makes 24. I'm not done with either of these problems, actually, because both of them can be simplified in this case. For example, letter A, 14 over 10, can be simplified if you divide both by 2, and you get 7 over 5. Same thing over here, divide both by 2, and you get 7 over 12. We're going to go ahead and flip to proportions. When you are solving proportions, so example 2 says solve the proportion. It says 11 over 6 equals x over 30. Well, we want to know what x equals. We do not know what it equals at this point. Well, we can figure it out. If these two equal each other, then how can we get from 6 to 30? Well, we know 6 times 5 is equal to 30. So we're going to do the same thing with 11. Multiply it by 5. Therefore, x is going to equal 55. So decide how you can get from here to here and apply that to find out what x is. Let's go ahead and do letter A. Letter A says W over 35 equals 4 over 7. Okay, well, we want to go from this ratio to this ratio because we want to find out what W equals. Well, we know 7 times what equals 35? It's going to be 7 times 5. So then in order to get the 4 to equal the W, we also need to multiply by 5. And we get W equals 20. Let's go ahead and do an example here. It says, setting up a proportion. A recipe for tomato salsa calls for 30 tomatoes to make 12 pints of salsa. So 30 tomatoes to 12 pints. So when you set up your proportion, you're going to have it equal another ratio. How many tomatoes are needed to make 4 pints of salsa? So we don't know how many tomatoes. The tomatoes go on top. But we know that we want 4 pints of salsa. Well, how do we go from 12 to 4? Looks like in order to go from 12 to 4, you need to divide by 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So how can we go from 30 to t? Divide by 3. So t equals 10. That means that you need 10 tomatoes to make those 4 pints of salsa. The elevator that takes passengers from the lobby of the John Hancock Building in Chicago to the observation level travels 150 feet in 5 seconds. The observation level is located on the 94th floor at 1,029 feet above the ground. Find the time it takes the elevator to travel from the lobby to the observation level. We're going to continue on with our John Hancock building problem. So we have 150 feet in 5 seconds, so we want to know how long it's going to take up to get to 10 to 9 feet. So we have X seconds on the bottom. We do not know how we are going to get there. So how do we get from 150 feet to 1,029 feet? Well, we can figure that out by taking 1,029 divided by 150. So we take 1,029 divided by 150, we get 6.86. So we know in order to get there, we need to multiply by 6.86. So 5 times 6.86 will get us to our x. So it's going to take 34.3 seconds to get to the observation level of the John Hancock building. Let's go ahead and solve proportions using cross products. This is a much easier way to solve proportions, okay? When you solve proportions, all you actually need to do is multiply this side. So 8 times 280, which is 2,240, equals this times this, 100x. And then you solve it like a normal equation. Well, what is 2240 divided by 100? X is going to equal 22.4. So when you're solving using cross products, you literally multiply across, so 4 times 30, which is 120, equals a times 24, which is 24a. And then solve. It just becomes a one-step equation here. Divide by 24, divide by 24 to get a by itself, and a is going to equal 120 divided by 24, which is 5. We get into some more complicated ones here. When you are doing the cross product of these to figure out what x equals, notice that you have a full x minus 6 here. You need to make sure that when you multiply the 3 times x minus 6, that you put the x minus 6 in parentheses. This is telling us that the 3 gets multiplied to the x and to the negative 6. And it equals x times 2, which is 2x. This becomes an equation where we have variables on both sides. So from here, our first step is to distribute. We get 3x minus 18 equals 2x. Our next goal is to get our variables to one side and our numbers to the other side. Well, in this case, our numbers are already on one side, so let's just get the 3x to the other side. Even though it's going to end up with some negatives, we're going to subtract 3x. We get that negative 18, well, 2 minus 3 results as negative 1x. We are not quite done yet, because what's happening to x is it's being multiplied by negative 1. So in order to get rid of that, I need to divide by negative 1, where I get x is equal to positive 18 because it becomes a negative divided by a negative. Let's go ahead and do one of the more difficult examples here, letter F. So letter F, same deal. You need to cross multiply. So you're going to take 6 times w minus 10. But remember, what do you need when you're multiplying times two terms? We need parentheses. Equals, looks like we have it again, negative 2 times 4 plus 2w. Looks like we're going to have to end up distributing twice here. 6 times w and 6 times negative 10 is 6w minus 60. And negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And negative 2 times 2w is negative 4w. Again, this becomes an equation where we can solve it based on our steps with variables on both sides. So in this case, let's get all our variables to one side and numbers to the other side. Let's try and keep those variables positive to make it easier on ourselves. So 6w and negative 4w. If I were to subtract 6w over, I would get negative 10w, but it's going to be easier if I add 4w to both sides here, where I get 10w minus 60 equals negative 8. Now I need to get 60, the negative 60 to the other side, doing the opposite operation. And I get 10w equals, what's negative 8 plus 60? That's positive 52. Our last step is to do the inverse operation to w. Well, it's being multiplied by 10, so in order to get rid of the multiplied by 10, I need to divide both sides by 10. 52 divided by 10 is 5.